The war had been lost. Humanity, once a thriving race on Earth, had been pushed to the edge of extinction. Advanced alien species, vast in number and superior in technology, had waged a relentless assault on every human stronghold. The invaders, powerful, merciless, and seemingly unstoppable, had no real opposition left. Earth's defenses were crumbling. The human military, though courageous, had been outclassed at every turn. Attempts at resistance were futile. The world had no place in this cosmic conflict. Humanity was on the brink of collapse. Colonies on distant planets fell one by one, and Earth itself was all but a lost cause. The last remaining bastion of human resistance was an assortment of scientists, engineers, and military officers working out of hidden underground bases, fighting back only with what little they had left. But every day, the enemy grew stronger, and every attempt at counteroffensive failed. Morale plummeted. Desperation set in. Humanity's fate seemed sealed. Yet, in the darkest hour, a solution emerged from the unlikeliest of sources. A breakthrough, one that was morally questionable and dangerously radical, began to take shape in secret. A group of human scientists, led by the brilliant but ruthless Dr. Malia Voss, devised a plan to save humanity, but it came with a heavy cost. The new technology they had developed was not an ordinary weapon. It was a procedure, a means to create a new breed of soldier, one that was far beyond the limits of what humanity had ever been capable of before. A human soldier with the strength and intelligence to rival the aliens, but with none of the empathy or compassion that had once defined humanity. Dr. Voss's team worked tirelessly to modify the human genome, creating a breed of soldiers whose instincts were focused solely on survival and conquest. These new soldiers were engineered to be merciless, ruthless, and efficient, designed to fight without hesitation, without remorse. The ethical implications were enormous, but the time for hesitation had passed. It was humanity's last, best chance for survival. The first of these enhanced soldiers was a man named Elias Kane, a former soldier turned reluctant test subject. He had volunteered for the experiment knowing full well what it would cost him. The transformation was brutal. His body was enhanced with genetic modifications that increased his strength, speed, and resilience far beyond normal human capabilities. His mind, however, was the true change. The emotional barriers that once made him human, fear, compassion, doubt, were stripped away. Elias Kane became a machine of war, incapable of pity or hesitation, focused solely on victory. Once the initial modifications were successful, others followed. Thousands of soldiers, men and women alike, volunteered for the program, each one eager to fight back in any way they could. These new warriors were trained to fight not with honor, but with efficiency. They were taught that the only path to victory was through annihilation, and that mercy had no place in war. As the first group of these soldiers prepared for deployment, humanity's leadership knew there was no going back. The war had been lost, but perhaps, just perhaps, the human race might find a way to win through sheer brutality. The deployment of the first wave of these soldiers onto the front lines was met with shock and confusion by the alien forces. Humanity had always been considered weak, a species to be wiped out quickly and efficiently. They never expected humans to fight back with such overwhelming ferocity. The aliens had no frame of reference for this kind of warfare. The ruthless soldiers, trained to think only of victory and survival, attacked with an intensity that the aliens couldn't comprehend. Every move was calculated for maximum destruction. Their assaults were swift and brutal. There was no mercy, no negotiation. For the first time, the alien forces found themselves on the defensive. The galaxy had underestimated humanity. No longer was humanity the weak, primitive race it had once been. The war was far from over, but a new chapter had begun. It was a chapter where the enemies of humanity would learn, too late, that humans were capable of more than they had ever imagined. And they would soon learn that in war, there were no rules, no boundaries, only victory or annihilation. The ruthless new soldiers of humanity were ready to take back their world. And nothing at all would stop them. The ruthless human soldiers moved forward with unrelenting precision. The battlefield had shifted, and the once confident alien invaders were now beginning to question their invincibility. Humanity, which had been so easily dismissed as weak, had become a force to be reckoned with. These new human soldiers fought with a ferocity that the alien forces had never encountered before. Their tactics were brutal and efficient, a stark contrast to the conventional methods of warfare the aliens were accustomed to. Every strike, every ambush, every calculated maneuver was designed to break the enemy's spirit. The initial victories were small, barely enough to slow the alien advance. But each victory, no matter how insignificant it seemed, had a profound impact on the morale of the human resistance. It wasn't just about the victories themselves, but the way they were won. The alien forces, accustomed to overwhelming their enemies with superior technology and firepower, found themselves caught off guard by the relentless efficiency of the human soldiers. Their superior weapons were no match for human ingenuity, and their vast numbers began to dwindle as the soldiers of Earth picked them apart, one strike at a time. Humanity's strategy was simple but effective. Exploit weaknesses, adapt quickly, and never show mercy. The alien invaders had grown complacent, assuming that their advanced technology would carry them to victory. But they hadn't accounted for the unyielding spirit of humanity, nor their ability to improvise and adapt to any situation. The human soldiers didn't fight by the book. They didn't follow the same rules of engagement. Instead, they fought like animals, using the environment to their advantage, setting traps, and exploiting every vulnerability they could find. They didn't hesitate to sacrifice anything to achieve their goal, total victory. As the human forces gained ground, the alien leaders began to panic. They had underestimated humanity's capacity for ruthlessness, and it was becoming clear that this war would not be as easy as they had anticipated. The humans were using guerrilla tactics, sabotage, and surprise attacks to destabilize the enemy, and their morale was beginning to crumble. The invaders couldn't keep up with the relentless nature of the human assault, and they were losing soldiers at an alarming rate. Each attack was more devastating than the last, and the aliens struggled to regroup. The human soldiers didn't just fight, they terrorized. They hunted down alien commanders and executed them without hesitation. The alien ranks, once filled with confidence, now started to show signs of fear. The relentless brutality of the human soldiers had broken their will to fight. As the tide of battle turned, the aliens attempted to reorganize and counterattack, but their efforts were in vain. Every time they tried to regain control, the human forces struck harder, faster, and without warning. The human forces were beginning to develop a reputation, not as an underdog, but as a force that would stop at nothing to win. The invaders who once saw humanity as expendable now realized that this was a race of survivors. The battlefield, once dominated by the superior alien forces, had become a place where humans fought with such brutal efficiency that their enemies began to doubt their own superiority. Humanity was no longer a weak species on the verge of extinction. They had become a relentless, merciless force that would do whatever it took to survive and take back their world. With each victory, the human forces grew bolder. The alien forces, now in disarray, were left scrambling to hold their positions. Human ingenuity, once underestimated, had become the greatest weapon of all. It wasn't their technology or their numbers that won the day. It was their ability to adapt, to think on their feet, and to fight with a ruthlessness that no other species could match. Humanity had taken the war to the aliens, and for the first time the invaders were on the back foot. The war was far from over, but the humans were no longer fighting to survive. They were fighting to win, and that made all the difference. The final push had begun, and there was no turning back. Humanity's newfound ruthlessness had altered the course of the war, but now, the stakes were higher than ever. The alien invaders, having already sustained heavy losses, were preparing for one last attempt to crush the human resistance. Their commanders believed this would be the decisive battle, an all-out assault that would break the back of humanity once and for all. What they failed to realize was that the humans, now led by the ruthless soldiers they had created, were ready to finish what they had started. The final confrontation was set. Humanity's remaining forces, bolstered by the new breed of soldiers, gathered for the last stand on a massive alien stronghold, a bastion of their power. The human soldiers knew that this would be their moment, the last chance to eradicate the alien threat once and for all. Every soldier, no matter their rank or background, had one singular purpose: victory at any cost. The thought of failure was not an option. The cost of defeat was too great, and the human resolve was unbreakable. The aliens, unaware of how far humanity had come, were confident in their ability to crush the last remnants of resistance. They had advanced technology, overwhelming numbers, and an unshakable belief that their superiority would win the day. But the human soldiers were no longer fighting with desperation. They were fighting with the certainty that they were the superior force. They had adapted, learned, and now had the advantage. The battle began, and the clash was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Humanity's tactics were relentless, calculated, and brutal. The alien forces, initially confident in their strength, quickly found themselves outmatched. The human soldiers struck with precision, using the terrain to their advantage, setting traps, and exploiting every weakness. The once proud alien warriors, accustomed to overwhelming their enemies with firepower, were caught off guard by the ingenuity and sheer tenacity of the human forces. The fighting was intense, and the casualties were staggering on both sides. But as the hours passed, it became clear that the aliens were losing ground. Their superior technology and numbers couldn't compensate for the determination of the human soldiers. The alien commanders tried to regroup, attempting to launch a counterattack, but it was too late. The human forces were everywhere, cutting off escape routes, sabotaging vital systems, and dismantling the alien stronghold piece by piece. Humanity's new breed of soldiers proved to be an unstoppable force. They pushed forward relentlessly, never pausing, never hesitating. They had been trained for this moment, and they fought with a singular purpose: to win. The alien invaders, now desperate, launched their final attempt at a counteroffensive, but it was clear that the tide had turned. The human forces were too well prepared, too well organized. The aliens, once so confident in their dominance, now found themselves overwhelmed. In the heart of the battle, the human soldiers pressed on, cutting through the alien defenses like a hot knife through butter. Their tactical brilliance, their ruthlessness, and their sheer willpower had brought them to this point. There was no more room for mercy, no more room for doubt. The human soldiers fought with the intensity of creatures backed into a corner, fighting for their survival, and for the survival of their entire species. By the time the final assault reached the heart of the alien stronghold, the alien leadership was in disarray. Their forces, now decimated, were retreating, but it was too late. The human soldiers had already breached the core of the alien command structure. The battle was over. The aliens, once confident they would subdue humanity, had been defeated, routed by the very species they had once dismissed as weak and inferior. The victory was not just military, it was a statement. Humanity had proven that they were not a species to be underestimated. They had turned the tide of the war, not through superior technology or sheer numbers, but through adaptability, ruthlessness, and an unwavering determination to survive. The alien forces, shattered and defeated, retreated into the void, leaving humanity to reclaim its place in the galaxy. The war was won, and humanity had emerged victorious, but the cost had been immense. Now, with the alien threat finally extinguished, humanity would rebuild, but they would never forget the lesson they had learned. In the face of extinction, they would stop at nothing to win. The war was over, but its effects would be felt for generations. Humanity had emerged victorious, but the cost had been immense. The soldiers who had fought so ruthlessly were now forever changed. The bloodshed, the brutality, the sacrifices, everything that had been done in the name of survival had left a mark on them. Many wondered if the victory was worth it. Could humanity, now tempered by war and shaped by cruelty, ever return to what it once was? Could it rebuild its society, its values, or had the war broken something irreparably within them? In the aftermath of the final battle, humanity's leaders were forced to confront the new reality they faced. The alien threat had been eliminated, but the war had altered everything. The new breed of soldiers, once hailed as saviors, were no longer seen as heroes. They were weapons finely tuned for destruction, but at what cost? Many of these soldiers, having lived their entire lives with a singular purpose, victory, now found themselves adrift, questioning their place in a world that had changed beyond recognition. The price of survival had been steep, and now humanity had to grapple with the moral consequences of what it had done to win. Despite the internal struggles, the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. Once seen as weak and insignificant, humanity had now proven that it was a force that could not be ignored. The alien species, who had thought little of humanity before, now knew better than to underestimate them. The fear of humanity's unrelenting determination spread across the stars. In the wake of their victory, humans did not seek to conquer the galaxy, but rather to solidify their place within it. They were no longer the underdog. They had earned their spot among the stars. But with the war's end, the question remained: could humanity find a way to reconcile its past with its future? The new soldiers, those who had been molded into ruthless warriors, could not simply be forgotten. Some chose to live in isolation, haunted by the horrors they had committed in the name of survival. Others tried to reintegrate into civilian life, but their sense of purpose had been warped by war. The world was left with the task of rebuilding not only their cities but also their very humanity. The scars of the war ran deep, and the emotional cost was something that could not easily be erased. In the years that followed, humanity worked to rebuild its alliances and restore order across the fractured systems. The human leadership, though forged in the crucible of war, understood that their victory had come with a heavy price. The lessons learned in battle had shaped them into something new. There was no going back to the naive, peaceful humanity of the past, but there was a sense of purpose in the rebuilding process. The future of humanity was uncertain, but they had proven one undeniable truth: they would never be crushed again. The new era was one of survival, but also one of reflection. The galaxy watched in silence as humanity rose from the ashes, their ruthless warriors now the stuff of legend. The message had been sent across the stars. Humanity would not be wiped out. They had fought not just for their survival, but for their place in the cosmos, and they had earned it. The universe had learned to fear them, but humanity was also learning something vital. In the aftermath of their victory, there was a quiet resolve to never forget what had been lost in the pursuit of victory, to never again let the darkness of war consume them. The future, uncertain as it was, held a glimmer of hope, and humanity would move forward with the knowledge that it was their own unyielding spirit, above all else, that had brought them to this point. They had conquered their enemies, but now they faced the ultimate challenge: conquering themselves.